Last year here in Portsmouth, SailGP enjoyed superb conditions and delivered some great racing. Understandably, this year they're hoping for the same, and the forecast at least does look good. But this year's been a difficult one for the league, with some catastrophic collisions putting them on the back foot as they repaired the damage and got the fleet back up to size. In the last month or so, things have settled down, but there hasn't been that much said about how the event might look going forwards and what changes have been made. So, with SailGP rolled into town, I took the opportunity to speak face to face with the boss, Russell Coutts, and we started on that subject. Russell, good to see you. Seems like quite a long time since we saw you last. It was here in Portsmouth. Quite a lot of water's gone under the bridge since then. There's a couple of key things I want to ask you about. I think the first one that strikes me is quite a big change. It changed the format now. You're sailing in two groups. Talk us about why that's come about and what you want to achieve with that.
Yeah, well, the first 5 years with SailGP was all about establishing the product, and now we're moving into a phase where it's about scaling the events and consistency of venues and consistency of delivery of product. And clearly, with 14 teams next year, we would have been in that format anyway. I looked at it in Halifax, and to me, it looked like a good product with a split fleet. Even though the British were out, because of their wing damage and so forth, it still, to me, was a compelling day. So we've moved to that, and just from the point of view of consistency.
Right. I mean, it certainly looks like it's changed the racing, and many people would say for the better, because there's more room on the race course, there's less dirty air, you don't get buried in the fleet.
Certainly in
Are you pleased with that?
Certainly in lighter winds, I think the fleet's less spread, because of the disturbed wind. So that's probably a better feature. We saw that with the 3 and 4 boat finals as well. So yeah, I think it's a good move, but mainly we've done it for consistency. I do think the bigger fleets look pretty impressive. So it's certainly the start and the first part of the race, but they do get very spread, and that's an issue when you get one boat lapping the other boats, because they're sailing around in clear air and the other ones are in disturbed air.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of talk after the problems that we had in New Zealand, and from a safety point of view, do you feel, does that address that as well? What are your views on that?
Well, a boat could slide sideways and lose control in a two-boat format. I think there was a lot of commentary on that. I think it does potentially reduce congestion at the first leeward gate, but we widen those gates anyway. So in a way, that wasn't really the issue. The boats have still got to keep a lookout, and there will be boats converging at various parts of the racecourse, even in a 6 or 7 boat fleet. That's can still be an issue. So that wasn't the reason that we split the fleets now.
Right. How about the development of the boats? Are there any changes? I mean, there's all kinds of things have been talked about with the developments of the boat. I'm thinking from a safety point of view. I want to come on to the performance thing in a minute, but from a safety point of view, people talking about the equivalent of the hula, is it, in Formula One, that kind of thing. I mean, what kind of things have you been considering, and what might be coming down the line?
Yeah, there's a lot of work going on at the moment. So our engineering team working with various other entities to model for example, the bow's a big focus, and the energy absorption of the bow in a collision, and also the cockpit protection. You clearly want to do that right. You don't want to create a situation that that has unintended consequences. So that modelling's happening now. We've got the results of the first, I think, 4 studies, and then the engineers will, no doubt implement those designs and make those adjustments. But they're the main things. There's also moves like ensuring that there's in all configurations that there's the 2 aft jack lines have to be used. So that ensures that you've got the strategist can move to leeward and check out the blind spots, because there's a blind spot. You do see through the wing window as the driver, and you do see if the boat's the right heel. You do see through the jib window as well. But of course, there can be blind spots, and so that there's been quite a lot of work done on that, and ensuring that the coaches play a role on this as well, with their off the boat communications.
And so, whilst on the subject of modifications, last year, and switching more to thinking about performance, last year we were talking, or you were talking, about some very exciting ideas with maybe turbo or power-assisted foiling, that kind of stuff. Where's that at, and what other kind of things are you looking at?
Yeah, there's been some other.
I can see you're excited about that already.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. I think that'd be a huge, step for the sport, and pretty cool actually. I think we want to keep the integrity of the racing, obviously, so that's a major consideration. But it would add an element. So of decision around that. So there's some not all water propulsion, but there's some propulsion ideas being worked through now. We've obviously tested a water propulsion system. That's one option, but there are other options as well. So we'll talk about that in due course.
No more other things you can talk about that might be coming down the line? I mean, SailGP, one of the great things I've always felt about SailGP is the development of the technology, because you sit in this very unusual position, and you've created it where you're a one design fleet and you're at the leading edge of technology. Yeah, I think that doesn't happen very often.
Probably the most tightly controlled one design fleet in the world, because of the tech. So you can compare all measurements that we're recording on the boat accurately and instantly with the anomaly detection software. You can see if there's anything different on any one of the boats. And in fact, on the New Zealand boat in Christchurch some years ago, there was a difference picked up immediately. And so that's an example of how that system works. I think it's really good. We do have some pretty exciting developments coming up in the pipeline. The good news is that we've now got a facility that we can actually build this stuff at scale. Because we're now going to have 14 teams racing next year. So when you implement something like that, you've got to make sure it works first off, and as it's intended, and then secondly, introduce it across the fleet at scale. So there is a timetable for that, and we think quite long term now. We're sort of looking 10 years out for some of these developments.
Wow.
and stepping it. Well, when you look at the budget process, obviously you've got to make it economical for the league and the teams. Then you sort of look at it and you say, okay, where do we want to be in 10 years? How will that development evolve? As I've said several times, the good thing about these boats is they are modular, so you can choose when to upgrade certain components. And that's an advantage for sure. So you don't have to scrap the whole thing and start again.
When you say you're doing it at scale, that's out of SailGP Technologies down the road, is it? Yeah, same facility.
Yeah. So that's a amazing facility. It's just, and even in the last 12 months, it's really stepped into up to a whole new level. And even things like tracking the everything on all the detailed fittings and everything are now barcoded on the boat. So all the components. So you're now getting full history and register of the parts usage and you know, whether it's been swapped between boats and so forth. So you can see the history of those parts, and we can learn about the, you know, for example, the reliability of them and when they should be checked and serviced and so forth in a much more, you know, professional way, and that'll have a big impact on the league as well. And we're also, because of the facility, we've caught up with the whole spare parts situation. Eventually, of course, the newest boat's going to Pensacola as a training boat, and the goal is to that, of course, acts as a spare to some degree for the moment, but in the future, of course, we will have spare boats on the tour, travelling with the league, and you know, that Pensacola facility also, we envisage that having multiple boats.
Portsmouth, been here before. You know this area very well indeed. Last year was
not really. I sort of know it reasonably well, but yeah, but not. I wouldn't say I know it.
You know. Well, you know it quite well.
Quite well, let's say. Yeah.
But it was a cracking event last time. It looks like we're going to get the same conditions this year. What are you looking out for? What do you think? What are you looking out for at this event?
Yeah, I think it's going to be some great racing. I mean, racing's tight now. You know, I think Jensen moving on to the Australian boat has made a real difference to that team in a positive way, and that's why they're so hard to beat now. You know, they've just stepped it up another level. You know, so another team that I think everyone's chasing, particularly in the conditions we're going to see this weekend. But who knows? You know. I seem to recall last year they didn't have a particularly good event here, but again, that's now I think they're even stronger than they've ever been, and they've got to be one of the top picks, unless something radical happened. They are in the tougher group though, or what I would describe as the tougher group. So. You know, we'll see.
On that subject, you've just reminded me of something I wanted to ask you about the groups. So you've chosen to go for two groups, splitting the fleet into two groups. As I understand it, those groups remain the same throughout the weekend until you get towards the final.
Yeah, I guess based on the results of the last event, so which we think mixes it up a little bit more. If it was based on the season championship, you'd generally get the same groups, you know, in each event.
But did you? My question would be: did you consider like some events where everybody gets to race everybody else, and you just keep rotating around, so then you don't have to make that split? You just know that in the course of the weekend, everybody's going to race everybody else. Was that a consideration?
Yeah, it was. But when we expand the number of boats, so as I said at the start of the interview, this is all about creating consistency, you know, and making it, you know, understandable for the fans long term. So we're going to, obviously, you know, next year, the intention was always to go to a 7-and-7 format. We do have some thoughts, you know, on how that format could evolve in the future, and you know, we'll be making those changes in due course.
Okay, and finally, looking much further down the track, and not wishing to deliberately put a dampener or anything, but it must be a concern as to what are the thoughts about the Middle East stages of the event, with what's going on out there at the moment. That must be a concern for you.
Yeah, we're keeping an eye on it, but at this stage, you know, clearly we wouldn't put people in an unsafe situation, or what we thought was an unsafe situation. But at this stage, the various authorities, whether that be the British or the US, is saying that travel's open, and I've obviously got a lot of support from the region, and I think it is important that we show solidarity, both, you know, even for the development of sailing in the region. I mean, we've grown to about 16% awareness in the region, so it's quite an important region for us, you know, in terms of viewership as well. So, you know, we'll keep an eye on it, we'll monitor it. Of course, that the ship leaves, or maybe not not of course, but the ship leaves at the end of September, so that'll be the first big decision date. And then, but as I said, we're not going to put our people in an unsafe situation. If something happened in the days or the week, even the week before, then we would make a decision on that.
Yeah. Okay, well, fingers crossed. Well, Russell, thanks as always for taking the time to have a chat to us.
Yeah.
And well, let's look forward to this weekend.
Yeah, should be great. Thank you.